up, and like an ice skater spinning, if you pull in your arms, you spin faster. If you put them out, you spin slower. A contracting star or planet will spin faster and faster until the centrifugal force trying to make things fly off the spinning surface is stronger than gravity, and it fissions and you create planets usually in twin pairs. So that's the fission model, and then tidal forces evolve things outward to where they are today. There's a brief summary of the fission model and the key points. It means planets and moons tend to occur in twin pairs. When we look at the planets in the solar system today, interestingly, they also seem to occur in twin pairs, except for the things that had previously been known to be probable exceptions. For example, the aforementioned by me and by Jason, Robert Harrington and I co-wrote papers that were published in the astronomical literature 30 years ago about Mercury probably being an escape moon of Venus. Mercury and Venus started originally very similar to the Earth's moon and Earth. But Mercury had raised larger tidal forces on Venus, and its orbit evolved faster, and it was able to escape into a planetary orbit. We went through the whole set of dynamics on that. Mars apparently also was not an original planet, but was a moon of a planet that exploded, planet V. And Pluto and its moon Charon apparently were at one time separate moons of Neptune and escaped again under the influence of a large body that came close by. That might have been the end of the former planet T when it made a close approach to Neptune and underwent sufficiently strong tidal stresses that caused it to blow up. Now let's concentrate a little bit on planet V because there's a lot of current interest in that subject because of what we're finding out with all the spacecraft that are visiting Mars currently. Planet V is not the one in the middle of the main asteroid belt that has been proposed as the origin of the main belt asteroids, but rather it was originally in the orbit now occupied by Mars. And we think that planet V had twin moons, Mars and Bellona, that planet V exploded 65 million years ago through natural processes. And that explosion produced damage throughout the solar system. On Earth, we see it as what's called by the geologists the KT boundary. To us, let's see, I think the next, whoops. Let me back up one. Yes, there's an overview of the KT boundary events. That's when the dinosaurs were done in. It was a global event. There are now 16 known craters associated with that date. There were hot zones of radioactivity, a major episode of volcanism that spread over a wide area on Earth, changes in the air and the ocean, a single global fire, if you can imagine that. A lot of damage here on Earth from an explosion as far away as the orbit of Mars. There's a lot of evidence for this event on Mars, the surviving body today. Most strikingly of all is that Mars is like two planets, two hemispheres glued together, because on one side it is saturated with craters, and on the other side it's flat and smooth. And there's been many efforts to explain this dichotomy, as it's called. Why is one side of Mars so different than the other? Well, if Mars is originally a moon, keeping the same face toward its parent planet, just as our moon keeps the same face toward Earth, and all the major moons in the solar system keep the same face toward their parent planets, then, of course, if the parent planet explodes, what happens? You can only crater and blast one side of the moon. The other side is facing away, and there's no damage, or little damage. Also, the pole tipped over suddenly by 90 degrees, a major episode of volcanism. Much of the atmosphere was blown away. There are elements in the atmosphere that indicate a massive explosion occurred. They don't occur through natural processes, and so on. And there's also evidence for a major flood event, probably with the explosion of the moon later on. Now, people ask why planets explode. That's kind of off topic for today. But let's just say there's now a pretty good theory involving gravitational processes that explains why they explode. And there's something else interesting about the subject of gravity that relates to the subjects of interest to this entire symposium, which is that we've discovered, well, shall we say, recognized in the last 15 years that gravity is a natural force that propagates much faster than the speed of light. And previously that was thought to be a physical impossibility, but we now know that that isn't the case, that the old idea that there is a universal speed limit is now off the books. And gravity apparently is an example of something that violates that limit because it propagates much faster than light. And the importance of that for the whole subject of ufology is it means that communicating with light and radio signals at the speed of light is not going to do it. The SETI program isn't going to work, and you can't expect intelligent species to be using communication signals that are so slow that it takes years to get to the nearest star and hundreds of thousands of years to get signals across the galaxy. They would be using gravitational signals once they perfected that technology, in which case you could still communicate within seconds or minutes across these huge distances. So the fact that both faster than light communication and travel are now possible in physics is an important development and changes a lot of our thinking about who could be here and why they aren't visible and so on. Let's see, there's another summary again of the evidence that Mars was a former moon and a graphic of the dichotomy showing that one side is heavily cratered and the other not, and also a thicker crust. And that when the other moon exploded 3.2 million years ago, it produced a major flood on Mars. Here are the two hemispheres of Mars in spacecraft close-up views of the entire hemisphere. Again, you can see the saturation with craters here, and the blue areas are not oceans. They're just flat, smooth areas where there's essentially nothing in the way of cratering. No large craters survive. There are lots of small ones. This video gives a brief overview of what we've learned about Mars in the last 10 years and what we now think it means in terms of reconstruction of the violent history of Mars. Let's see. How are we doing on sound? All right.
You may have to turn your volume up. It seems a little soft.
I'd have to break out of the presentation to do that.
Oh, okay.
See if that works.
Named after the Roman god of war.
Can that be heard?
New research shows
Okay.
that Mars was originally one of two moons of a now exploded parent planet. Indeed, evidence exists of 6 planet explosions throughout the history of our solar system. The most recent planetary explosion took place almost 65 million years ago. Its impact on distant Earth killed the dinosaurs and 70% of all species. but Mars was much, much closer. Somewhere near the present-day orbit of Mars, Planet V, a helium-class gas giant and parent of two large moons, Mars and Body C. Body C is a watery world. It's smaller and the outermost of the two twin moons. Mars is larger, drier, with a tighter orbit. Core evolution eventually leads to the collapse of Planet V, triggered when tidal forces from the moons and sun are at their strongest. Suddenly, an explosion. The surface of the moons facing Planet V are blasted as debris from the explosion expands throughout the solar system. The atmosphere of Mars is dramatically altered forever. These two moons enter eccentric orbits around each other for the next 62 million years. Tidal stresses gradually build in Body C until 3.2 million years ago, when another collapse becomes imminent. Again, debris, including water from Body C, slams into the surface of Mars. Most of the water sublimates into the cold vacuum of space. The rest is absorbed into the Martian surface. Some of that water and carbon dioxide freezes to form ice caps at the Martian poles. Mars also captures two small asteroidal moons, Phobos and Deimos. Over 20 features of Mars as seen today are a testament to this history. Surface evidence shows that there were two separate major pole shifts in Martian history. The southern half of Mars is saturated with impact craters, while the northern half is smooth, flat, and relatively crater-free. Major surface volcanoes, once violently active, now lie dormant. The cratered surface has a crust that is up to 20 kilometers thick near the middle, tapering near its boundary, while the smooth surface crust is a steady 1 kilometer thick for most of its hemisphere. A one-time major flood event with no evident source modified the surface extensively. Highland craters with outflow channels have no viable sources for water from either atmosphere or soil. For more background information and additional evidence, or to subscribe to Meta Research, please visit our website at www.metaresearch.org.
Okay, that's the overview video. It does a nice job of summarizing the picture. Of course, you have to consult the published articles on this to see the full plethora of evidence and how it stands up to the criticisms. This is the transition to the Mars anomalies part of the topic, because those tie right into this picture, which is why I gave that background, and also to our efforts to currently understand what's going on today in the solar system with the activity of intelligences, past and present. This is a picture taken by one of the Opportunity rovers on the surface of Mars. And the tracks made in the surface there were made by a rover, an Opportunity rover, as it passed by. And as it passed by, some liquid filled in the tracks and froze, and it's as you see it there. This happened several years ago, and there are many pictures like this, including pictures of the rovers with muddy wheels and so on. You wondered why NASA waited until just a couple of weeks ago to announce the discovery of water on Mars, when the water had been discovered on Mars probably a dozen or more times previously, dating all the way back to the early 80s, and was officially announced by the European Space Agency 3 years ago. But NASA didn't recognize any of those discoveries. and kept arguing, well, it could be carbon dioxide ice. There's no evidence that it's water. And interestingly enough, there is no experiment on either Spirit or Opportunity which could detect water directly. They're only to detect minerals that could have been modified by water billions of years ago. Reason for that is simple: jobs and money. The approved missions in the space program held off the discovery of water on Mars, according to advanced planning, until the Phoenix mission that just landed a few weeks ago, or last month. So if it had been recognized any sooner, the main point of that mission would have been undercut. Likewise, with many of the other findings, both the U.S. spacecraft in 1976 and more recently the European spacecraft have found strong evidence of microorganisms, living microorganisms, in the soil of Mars today. But they don't dare announce that or recognize it either right now, because then the justification for the next 6 missions would be undercut, and it would be back to the drawing board. So our NASA approval, a stamp of approval, will be slow in coming according to the schedule that's been doled out. Remember, it's I know there's a lot of talk in these conferences about conspiracies. You could call it a conspiracy if you wanted to, but really it boils down to money and jobs. They're humans like everybody else, and if you put a lifetime of work in on building an instrument for a spacecraft and then find that the mission is canceled because somebody beat you to the discovery, it's a devastating thing. So this is the way the space program as it's presently organized works. Here's an example of a couple of fossils seen by the Opportunity spacecraft. We won't have, same kind of comment, though not officially recognized yet as anything. When we look at the surface of Mars from orbit, we see all kinds of interesting things, and about 1 in every 1,000 photographs returned to Earth has shown something of such high interest that if we didn't know, that if it wasn't published on a NASA website and we didn't know it came from Mars, we would be pretty sure that the pictures had been taken on Earth. And I'll show you some examples of why in a moment. This is a low-resolution photograph of an area with a couple of large craters, as you see. And this white box that's drawn in here on top of the photograph, that's a region where the spacecraft took a very high-resolution view, so we could see close up what was there. And what they were interested in seeing was, what's this dark stain on the floor of the crater? And so when we switch to the high-resolution view, we'll see that it starts here. The spacecraft flies over empty desert sand. Then it comes to the edge of the crater, and we see the shadow on the wall of the edge of the crater. We see a bit of the normal floor of the crater, and then we come to the dark stain. So let's follow the spacecraft. Okay, there's an overview of the strip image it took, and now let's look at that magnified. It starts out over the desert, flat and smooth, not too much of interest. Then we come up to the edge of the crater. We see the shadow on the wall at the edge. We see a flat, smooth floor, and then we see the dark stain. We don't know what this is, but it does change with the seasons and with the and even with the time of the day, as the sunlight changes its direction and so on. So it's one of many, many things that we'd like to know more about, but probably won't know officially for many years. This also is something on Mars. I'm tempted to say growing, but we don't know that. This is an area, the coloration is added here on Earth. But we see these large objects with a branch-like structure around a central trunk area. This is a couple hundred meters across in the very low gravity field of Mars. There are many such pictures, and again, they do change with the seasons. And as the picture suggests, the European spacecraft, which does have colors, shows that they green up in the summer. That was one of Arthur C. Clarke's, the late science fiction authors, one of his favorites. He said he thought we'd been short-sighted and that it was 95% certain that Mars is more hospitable to life than previously thought. This is another kind of anomaly that we're seeing on the red planet called glassy tubes. Here's an overview picture of what was seen in high resolution. There seem to be 3 of these tubes coming together here, and this is a a clip, a magnified view of just this one tube, showing that what is characteristic of all of them, they seem to have a translucent tube material surrounded by these white bands that wrap around and around. And you can see through, in good high-resolution views, you can see that the bands do wrap, and you can see them faintly through the translucent tube. You also see this white spot here, which apparently is a specular reflection of sunlight, indicating a very shiny or possibly metallic surface, but a high-gloss surface, unlike the diffuse or scattered kind of